Moving on to the next question, how can biometrics leads, data managers, statistical programmers, statisticians work better together and collaborate better together to deliver better data?
So I'll kick us off. I think for me, the most important thing is having mutual respect and trust for the lead and the other function. Each one of the functional leads brings something to the table, and it's important to respect that and use the knowledge that they have with regards to their function and listen to something that the statistician might advise on when you do your database design, so that you can, in the end, have that collaborative approach to meeting the outcomes of your study. That as the project manager in me, again, that if you start and include everyone when you plan. So from a DM perspective, that initial database design and that starts off is not really that critical. That at that point, the timelines for stats and statistical programming is way off, but involve them. Let them know what the planning is. When are we going to go live? When would they want to maybe receive a first transfer to start looking at the data? So I think if you have that, all the stakeholders included from the start so that everyone understands what the dates are that you're working with, it just fosters that collaborative approach. And then again, the clear communication with all the functional groups. So if any thoughts on that?
I think communication is the most popular word today in this meeting. So what I think, if we look at the data management programming statistics, like classic model, it's like a vendor customer chain, right? So what I think very important for the true collaboration and to achieve those synergies we can achieve working as one biometrics department is those feedback loops. So when we work on programming, we will inevitably find something which can be improved back in the database, and we need to report to the data management. And again, good communication comes into play, right? Same with statistics. So when, for example, reviewing the output, there may be some feedback back to the programming or even back to the data management. So this kind of more circular way of working would really help us to achieve the results better with lesser stress and lesser effort.
Yeah, completely agree. I have two here, and my first one is directly tied to what Evgeny just said, which is I think it ultimately comes down to education. Like being a statistician, I should know not everything about data management, but I should know a lot about what the data manager is doing, when they are going to be doing it, why are they going to be doing it. And the same is certainly true for statistical programming, probably more so because you work so much more closely with a statistical programmer. But still, if I am the lead statistician and I know what my data managers are working on in terms of getting a data reconciliation plan together, and I have to provide spec input on that data reconciliation specification, I should know what the data manager is doing and when they're doing. And if I know those things, then I can help when I'm needed, or I can loop them in on their reviews whenever they're needed. So the first part, and that goes back to Evgeny's circular customer-vendor relation chain, really knowing what your key stakeholders need from you and looping them in. And getting that education can be difficult. So the way I would suggest it is to just ask. Just reach out to your lead data manager and say, hey, I'm going to be doing the statistical analysis plan in the next couple of weeks. Is there anything you need to know, or is there anything I should know from you about this? And if they don't know what the statistical analysis plan is, you can educate them. So it's kind of a win-win situation there. The second piece then really is, and this is a tough one, but it really is teamwork. So clinical trials can be very stressful, especially when it comes time for database lock. And you're working under immense pressure, immense timelines are just so tight, and everybody's kind of scrambling. Hopefully you don't get into that situation. Hopefully you can be proactive and kind of prevent that last minute scramble, but it happens. And when that happens, for whatever reason in our minds, teamwork kind of breaks down and everybody kind of becomes like self-preserve mode. Like, I'm not gonna be the one who messes this up. And that is never what a good lead does. A good lead always stands up tall and says, this is what's going on. I don't care who's at fault. We need to work together to find this solution. And if that is the mentality of the team, I am a firm believer that anything is achievable. But if the team devolves into this like self-protection mode and you're just pointing the finger, you're wasting energy, you are not working as a team, it is very bad. So I think the best way you can collaborate is to remember you all have the same goal. Everybody is trying to achieve the exact same thing, which is a successful clinical trial. In terms of conducting the clinical trial, you have no control over if the drug works or not. What I mean when I say a successful clinical trial, I mean successfully implementing it so that you get good readouts of the data and you can present that to a regulatory authority. That's the goal. And if you keep that in mind, you can achieve it. The goal is not to preserve yourself or preserve your reputation. That will come naturally as a byproduct of achieving a successful clinical trial. So try not to step into that self-preservation mode and try and always have the end goal in mind and collaborate better.
Yeah, so well said, because I think everybody wants to solve the problem. Something's going to go wrong, right? I mean, who's worked on a clinical trial? Everything's done perfectly. Nobody. So the issue is getting ahead, identifying that risk, that challenge early on, getting the stakeholders involved, transparency with your project manager, and solving the problem, not digging your heels in and just looking for someone to blame, because that will actually keep the problem from getting solved better. I'm going to move on to the next question, but I'm going to give you guys a sticky point on it. What challenges have you or your leads faced when fostering strong cross-functional team dynamics? And you cannot mention communication, because I think we have established the fact that that is always an issue, and you could just, every question you could just put communicate better. So what do you think are some other challenges you face that impact the team dynamic?
There is one thing which may seem to be contradictory to what Bobby said just now about collaborative work and the common goal, etc. But in fact, it is not. So one of the challenges I see is the kind of a lack of understanding of the responsibilities and the roles of the leads. So, and sometimes it leads to the lack of ownership. You know, I hear sometimes about the joint ownership, but honestly, I'm not a very big fan of this concept, because when the ownership is joint, we may end up with nobody having the ownership. So I think it's very important for every lead of every function to be very clear of what processes and what deliveries they are own and what they are accountable for. So a process may include different multiple roles with different multiple responsibilities, but there must be one owner, and this owner should be well aware of what they're accountable for.
That was brilliant. I could not agree more, right? Like it seems like you're shrinking your responsibilities down, and that can be seen as a negative thing, but it's not. The more clear cut your swim lane is, the less confusion there is of who's taking that ball, whose ball is that to grab. So Evgeny, I think that's a brilliant point. I think taking this question and expanding it beyond just the internal CRO team presents some other kind of issues or solutions that we might face in terms of cross-functional. And here I'm actually talking about the CRO working cross-functionally with the sponsor. That relationship can oftentimes be very confrontational. The sponsor sees the CRO as, we're paying you X amount of dollars, we expect perfection, and they have that right? These are not cheap things that they're asking us to do. However, if that relationship gets to that contention, that can be a real challenge. And now you're not working collaboratively, you're working very just kind of point and you do this, and it's not the best tandem movement towards that common goal of conducting a successful trial. So I would say that the challenge of maintaining a good, healthy relationship with the sponsor is a real challenge, but a good lead can act proactively and can ensure that that relationship maintains strong balance and does not devolve towards that kind of, you have to do this now or else type thing.
I think something that is also a challenge is conflicting priorities. So this sort of links in with what you guys said, right? So as leads, we are not necessarily all working on the same studies together. So you might have that your biostatistics lead also have deliverables on another study, or the data management lead has an interim log and a final log. But if you have that understanding of what the different roles are working with, it can really help to understand that this primary outcome that you're now working with might not be the only thing that this individual is focusing on. And then that lack of trust. So the moment that you start with blame shifting between roles and misaligning the communications with the expectations, that really just breaks down the collaboration within a team. So I think what you said, Evgeny, is so important, that we need to make, as leads, make the effort to understand what the other leads are doing, when they are doing it, what does it entail, so that you can know when they will need what they need, and trust that they will then be doing what they need to do. Understand that there might be some conflict in priorities. Not everyone has the same priorities that we focus on in our functional lead position.
Yeah, and it brings us back to Bobby's comment that we need to educate people, and every functional lead should be familiar with the problems and the processes of the other functional